Thank you, Sasha, for organizing everything here and to be with you here. So the main point of my presentation will be that I will try to compare the recent research on intelligence, as far as I could make a systematic review of literature, and to compare with classical notion of imago Dei. So neuroscientific findings on determinants of human intelligence are often interpreted as a challenge to human exceptionalism. This perspective has viewed a reductionist approach within neuroscience that, akin to phrenology, seeks to map neuronal processes to specific human behaviors and proposes theories that reduce complex mental function to neurobiological mechanisms. Yet a more integrative view within neuroscience now emphasizes the critical role of entire body, society, culture in shaping human behavior. Meanwhile, recent researches on neuroplasticity, for instance, studies showing structural brain changes in London taxi drivers, I was surprised by this example, due to expensive spatial knowledge of the city, has highlighted the influence of experience and introduced a new perspective on brain behavior and relationship, as was mentioned also by Alberto with the 3E model in research. So the question of human nature emerging from neuroscientific discoveries suggests the importance of considering the material substrate of understanding the human being and consequently of imago Dei. The issue of human exceptionalism often intertwined with the Christian theological inquiry into what it means to be at imagine Dei, in the image of God, acquires new dimension in light of neuroscience. So we can ask, when we speak of imago Dei, are we in search of ontological distinctive quality, an inherent possession unique to humanity, or rather, a highly complex function arising from the same material basis shared with other creatures? In order to answer this question, I think we should start with a question: what does it mean, humans to be created in the image of God? At least for Christian theology. What is the most divine in human beings according to Christian theology? For Thomas Aquinas, the likeness of the rational creature to God lies specifically in human understanding. I quote, "Insofar as the rational creature imitates God not only that he exists, existence, but also in that he understands." End quotation. This underscores the emphasis that the divine image is expressed secundum mentem, according to the intellect, in the full scope of man's, whereas, according to its other parts, in the mode of a trace, secundum alias partes per modum vestiti. The image of God is, for Thomas, say, impressed upon human nature precisely through the intellect. According to Aquinas, the concept of imago Dei does not entail mere physical resemblance, such as between two eggs, nor does it concern a simple derivation of one being from another, but rather such a derivation according to the species, in metaphysical terms. Therefore, it's not accidental, but substantial. The principle from which something derives is exemplar, while the fruit of derivation is the image. Thus, human actions, including free choices, are understandable only in the light of exemplaries of the Holy Trinity. This is linked to the belief in the significance of Christ, who alone is the image of invisible God, according to Colossians 1:15, and in whose image a human being was created. The pivotal issue of focusing on the species opens up theological inquiries into the essence of the image of God in human being. Some perceive the imago Dei in the capacity of transcendence, akin to God who transcends creation. Others see it, the imago Dei, in freedom and ability to establish relationships. In this, we are similar to God. Still others in reason, dominion, are leading toward a goal. This is the proper meaning of dominion over creation that is mentioned in the book of Genesis, as well as the capacity for moral action. Setting aside discussion on the proper exegesis of the image of God in the Bible, I will attempt to analyze how, from the perspective of neuroscience, one can assess the classical Thomistic doctrine of human likeness to God, through which an answer to the question of what most resembles its creator is revealed. For Thomas Aquinas, certain action approximates humans to God, and this is intellectual life, and the transition from individual conceptions to general concepts, thus imitating the knowledge of God that the Creator has about things He created, which He sees in Himself and not as something outside of Himself. Capturing goodness as such, which is a universal term, is a sign of divinity. For God perceives not so much good things as goodness in things. So God looks the world, as Aquinas would say, sub ratione bono. Recent research have seen a search of significant studies on human intelligence, examining core aspects such as memory, decision-making, reward system, belief structures. A central question in this field remains whether intelligence inherently requires a material substrate, and if so, to what extent identifying specific brain region responsible for its meaningful. Scholars increasingly stress the inseparability of neuronal and cognitive aspects, akin to relationship between musical notion and the music it represents. This analogy informs contemporary discussion on the scope and significance of the self, which is often differentiated into objective and subjective neuronal self, as well as the subjective transcendental self. The essence lies in the integrative process within the human being, where the self is recognized as a phenomenon of strong emergence. So, the prevailing consensus in the literature holds that intelligence cannot be localized within a specific brain region, such as the frontal lobe, and a more accurate model seems to be a small world network, which suggests that high intelligence likely depends on uninterrupted information transfer across various brain regions via white matter pathways. This model offers valuable insight for theological reflection on imago Dei and its relation to matter. The absence of a single, isolated brain region responsible for intelligence underscores the irreducibility of intelligence to discrete parts. Even where certain mechanisms or processes may take precedence, they must be understood within an integrated whole, analogous to consciousness, which is always embodied. The phrase Similitudo deitatis, similar to divine, as expressed in my paper's title, is used by St. Thomas Aquinas in his commentary on Peter Lombard's sentences to denote not so much the operation of the intellect themselves, but rather its effects. Within this context, I think it's interesting to think about the gift of wisdom in theological terms, which is invoked as that which perfects the intellect in what it apprehends, allowing one to evaluate and order matters correctly and ineffably, in accordance with divine judgment. Viewing intelligence as culminating in wisdom connects to broader understanding of human nature, inviting engagement with theological perspective. So here, theology contribution to this discourse, I think, lies in transcending narrow cognitive frameworks to include a wise, adaptive engagement with the world. In theological terms, wisdom is ordered to the common good and encompasses practical intelligence directed by theological virtue, including the gift of the Holy Spirit. Here Aquinas, once again, with his sub ratione Dei, so looking under the aspect of God, everything, supports an integrated approach, encouraging harmony rather than competition among different conceptions of intelligence. This expansion of intellect toward wisdom is crucial for discovering ways of resembling God. It involves more than organizing specific domains of activity. Rather, it directs one's entire life toward the highest good. Aquinas asserts that while similitudo, similarity to God, seems to be a passive element, being in the image of God introduces an active component. While neuroscience can contribute insights into cultivating wisdom, wisdom itself is not produced solely by brain structure. Neuroscience can help understand the dispositions in metaphysical terms dispositio necessary for achieving wisdom, but does not provide the causative basis. Wisdom requires the right formation of embodied human nature, integrating neuronal factors without making them determinative. However, the current trend to overemphasize biological causes as primary drivers of wisdom seems to be insufficient, as it interplays the complex formation of human intellect and its orientation towards the divine. Reductionist view risks missing the fuller scope of human potential, which includes, but is not limited to, biological structures. In a classical theological thought, the intellectual nature constitutes the image of God insofar as it partakes in immateriality and perfection. Thus, likeness to God as a rational creature does not merely concern engaging with earthly realities, but is manifested when a person ascends toward highest realms, ultimately toward God himself. In this ascent, a person achieves a specific form of divine resemblance through self-knowledge, reflecting the manner in which God understands all through his own word. I'd like to quote St. Thomas Aquinas from the Summa, where he's explaining this process of imitating God in knowing. So, to be wise, in Thomistic terms, includes to integrate neuroscience and material substrate with this epistemological component. And the mastermind point would be about neuroscience and the change of minds. Because, as we know, this process of achieving wisdom culminates in what St. Paul describes as renewal of minds. This is possible to achieve through wisdom, knowledge, and understanding. So, elements that St. Paul indicates are possible through the cross of Christ. Thus, we can ask, this change of minds have anything in common with brain processes? And more broadly, is conversion and the adoption of a given religion a result of changes or neuronal influence? In what measure, we can ask. Maybe we could suggest even to create some kind of neuroapologetics within theological reflection as well. So, what about transformation of the mind, mentioned in Romans 12:2, which is accomplished through the cross of Christ? I think this can be interpreted as the influence of experiencing something profound. So, the price of love in our action, which can be observed in the context reported by neuroscientific research. It concerned the neurobiological correlates of religious experience, as was mentioned in the previous presentation of Armand Savion, and your also paper in St. Fides about Sartre's St. John of the Cross. So spiritual phenomena may shape the plastic brain in this way, while also raising a question of how neuroscience influences the formation of view, its changes, and even false beliefs, such as how neuronal mechanisms are involved in moral reasoning and ethical decision-making informed by religious beliefs. In this regard, Aquinas' perspective aligns with contemporary neuroscience, which characterizes human intelligence as, let me quote, a higher order integrative mental ability. This quality of intelligence is not merely determined by the time taken to complete an IQ test, it's something more. Returning to the concept of renewal of the mind, this process transcends mere external exercise. This renewal encompasses the dynamic assimilation of the Trinity, facilitated by the activities of the mind and enhanced by grace, virtue, and the gift of the Holy Spirit. It pertains to the soul resemblance to God, which is actualized through grace and primarily through the internal addition of divine persons of the Trinity, thereby transforming us, according to Christian theology, into temples of the Holy Spirit. So, conclusions. Understanding the intellectual nature with Thomas Aquinas' theological framework resonates, I think, with contemporary research, at least in part of this research, in neuroscience. Reflecting on human intelligence and its development proves invaluable for comprehending the path of imitating God. particularly through cognitive mechanism and emphasis on relationality and neuronal networks. The crux of this inquiry lies in adopting an integral approach to anthropology, which recognizes the necessity of virtue and the cultivation for the full realization of the image of God, thereby necessitating a dynamic perspective. Christian theology contributes to this debate, I think, with a focus on the integrative approach, result of understanding that we embody the image of God as persons, not merely of individual faculties. Thus, the intellectual nature should be understood within the broader context of the truth regarding the full human nature, including its eschatological dimension, so the purpose of human nature. This contribution can be a wisdom-oriented attitude that can be employed also by neuroscientific research, which elucidates the ultimate purpose and order aligned with our final goal, while integrating various types of intelligence, often considered in isolation. The integrative role of theology, which elucidates purpose and fosters the capacity for creative intelligence, presents an interesting field for further research. Thank you for your attention.